Hey leaders, what if collaboration isn't about adding more meetings, more initiatives, and more checklists, but about alignment, trust, and knowing how you know your message is landing?
Intentional and purposeful focus on building a culture of collaboration is the secret for leaders striving to make a difference. In building a culture of collaboration, Kurtis and Lorna Hewson will share simple tips, ideas, and strategies to take your organization's collaborative efforts to the next level.
Before we jump into the episode, remember to join our mailing list at jlinsiders.com. Every Saturday, we send out an exclusive video only to our mailing list, along with other templates, resources, videos, and much, much more. We also share upcoming events and opportunities you may not hear about anywhere else. Go to jlinsiders.com to become part of the JL Insider community.
Welcome to another episode of Building a Culture of Collaboration. I'm Kurtis Hewson, lead learner and co-founder of Jigsaw Learning. Usually I would have my partner Lorna with me, but she is away working in a school today and not able to join us. But I am excited to be joined by Hanna Bauer, founder and CEO of HEARTnomics, a leadership and business transformation firm helping organizations align people, purpose, and performance during times of rapid change. Hanna brings nearly 3 decades of real-world leadership experience, from leading an international company through industry disruption to shaping national conversations in education and innovation to equipping leaders across corporate, nonprofit, government, and education sectors. She's also the author of Hustle with Heart and one of a select group of Maxwell Leadership faculty members worldwide. In this conversation, we're going to explore why collaboration initiatives often fail despite good intentions, how misalignment quietly erodes trust, and how leaders can create the clarity and feedback loops that turn collaboration into real momentum. So let's jump in. Hanna, so great to have you joining me here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Curtis. A true pleasure to be here.
So we were talking off camera a little bit that you're located in Atlanta. We're in Alberta, Canada, and you're about to experience something that we have as a regular winter event. Tell us more.
Oh, well, you're pros, aren't you? Because I mean, over here, we were just laughing because in the Southeast, we got news that we might get an inch, perhaps 2 inches, which, for us is almost at this point, they're calling it catastrophic of ice. And it's so interesting because we've gone through it before, but although some people may feel ready, some people may not. We're taking classes, but I think it was so key. What we're talking about was infrastructure and
Yeah.
alignment. The infrastructure, because although you could feel ready, like, hey, we got it, it's not just about you, right? Because it's an entire community. So that's what we're looking at right now, making sure that the community as well is going to be safe for this storm that is coming.
Well, that's definitely going to connect to the conversation that we're going to have about leading through communities, organizations, whatever that looks like. But before we dive deeper into that conversation, we always like to offer a first minute freebie, something that our audience could take away from the first minute of our conversation. So, Hanna, what's something that you could share with those that are listening or viewing that could be an immediate takeaway to help them support building a culture of collaboration?
Be kind to yourself. And we're fighting the what comes to be the result of misalignment, which is the breakdown, the burnout. So the one thing I would say for your listeners, one key thing for this year, as if we're starting the beginning of the year, kicking things off, it's not really the art of how much can I do in what time, but really what can I get rid of, what no longer aligns with me, and what things I do need to keep and get better at so they do align. So alignment is key, especially when we're talking about adapting, when we're talking about going through a lot of uncertainty. The way that you're going to be able to navigate really and not go out with just the fumes. This is already burnout, but being in alignment with your purpose, being in alignment with your calling, being in line with your vision and the mission of your organization is going to make things not only so much smoother, but enjoyable and fulfilling.
Oh, I love it, Hanna. And I want to dig into that a little bit more, but I'd also like to learn a little bit more about the work that you've done and what's brought you here. So I understand that your story of surviving a groundbreaking heart procedure because multiple institutions aligned around one mission was a powerful part of your experience. So tell us a little bit about how that early experience shapes the way you understand collaboration a day today, and how does it still influence how you lead and coach leaders?
Oh my goodness. Well, for me, it really was the difference between life and death. That's what collaboration meant. It was at the time in the 90s, there were two children's hospitals and an adult hospital, Emory University, which a lot of people may have heard is a research hospital. And these hospitals really came together to embark in a surgery that had never been done before. Now, before that, I have been suffering with heart disease for about 10 years and had some gone through two heart attacks. A lot of my time as a child, even as a teen, I lived in the CCU, which is a cardiac care unit. There was really not a next step. There was no like, hey, we're going to do this and this is the pathway. This is how we're going to get you here. It was basically like a day to day. We're keeping you alive. We're
Mm.
to just stay alive, basically, and looking at interventions. So this is the power of collaboration because in that process and going through adversity and also going through failed attempts at trying to come up with a solution, really those failed attempts, those failures, the hospitals, the professional teams, they learned from it to where there was that opportunity in 92, and I was the first child here to experience a heart ablation. And now the heart ablation is being used now for many people. It's like, oh, well, that's almost like it's an outpatient surgery. A lot of people have it. Well, I didn't know the impact of it until about 20 years afterwards, when I was called and they wanted to do a documentary on it. They wanted to do a documentary on my heart, the experience, and for the hospital. And that's when I learned not only about the collaboration that had happened between the hospitals,
Yeah.
the impact that obviously, of course, I mean, I was a living proof because I'm well, I'm having a family, I'm running a business, I went to the university, went to college, did life. But also hearing it from the doctor's perspective, and this is where the innovative part came in, because that's when I learned I was the first of 3,000 children that had been saved by
Oh,
this
wow.
at that time. Yeah, and this was
Yeah.
10 years ago. Not only was I the first one of 3,000, but is the way it revolutionized the way the heart disease was treated, to where it didn't just have to go through the open heart surgeries, but now you can start using laser and cryo and laparoscopic. So now even some heart surgeries, they just go through the main vein. So the way that you even access the points of failure changed. The way that the heart disease was just treated from Atlanta, basically worldwide. And from that point, I remember specifically my doctor saying that they were really, and they asked, well, how was this journey? What was the likelihood? He said, well, imagine the odds of this working think about being in a pitch dark black room and you're looking for that one little switch to turn the light on, but wait a second, the room's spinning at the same time.
Yeah.
So those were the odds that this was going to work. And it was just like a medical miracle that happened to them, a medical miracle that could be recorded, that then was able to be repeatable. And what he said really, what kept them going even in all of this, because, again, high risk, never been
Mhm.
done. And it was that they were just trying to keep me alive long enough for technology to catch up. And that was the birth for HEARTnomics for me. It shaped because it wasn't just the technology, it wasn't just the collaboration, that was part of it. There had to be a process, there had to be a system for them to be able to collect the failures, to collect the learning, to be able to apply it so it can be repeatable. But there also, what sustained me was the love. What
Yeah.
sustained me was the courage. Courage comes from love. Courage comes from passion. It was the hope. So there were these two coming together: love that sustained me, and the excellence in continuing and learning, the processes, the systems that go through it so it can be repeatable. But what was the key for that was the leadership. And
Hmm.
the leadership I saw through my parents, through the doctors. And those are the lessons that I take today to every organization I go to, is the leadership, the height of your leadership, your ability to be able to balance both the love for your organization and the excellence in which you execute is going to dictate not only your viability, so that you stay in business, so that you continue to do your thing, but really give birth to innovation, which is what we need for to be able to tackle the future problems that we're going to be facing as humanity.
Wow, that is a powerful story, and it definitely explains the naming of some of the things that you have, like HEARTnomics and Hustle with Heart, your
Yeah.
book. Wow, powerful, Hannah. It reminds me, I think I had read at one point a quote that had come from, I think it was Edison, around the I didn't fail at creating the light bulb. I think it was the connection to 1,000 times. I found 1,000 ways that didn't work.
Yeah.
And it's that idea of failing forward and the idea that, all of this gets accredited to Edison through history, but it was a team. There was a constant team that was trialing and learning as they went through. And I love that idea of we need to fail to learn, but
Yeah.
it's from those failures, what tweaks do we make? What adjustments? So I,
Yeah.
I love that idea of really being clear on our purpose. So you talked about passion and love that really was that driving force. I often see leaders that have all the best intentions, the
Yeah.
best passions, love, but even with those best intentions, have collaborative efforts that fail, that
Yeah.
do not work. So in your mind, what are some of the most common reasons that you see collaboration efforts break down in organizations, and what advice would you give to help with those efforts?
Oh, 100%. I see that too. I mean, I will say I probably started my leadership journey. I just had a passion and idealistic in a sense, like, oh, yes, we're gonna go and change the world. And then what happened? I did start taking steps. I did start going forward. I joined other people that were like-minded, and then we had chaos.
Yeah.
Because when you don't have processes and systems in place, you're gonna have chaos. And a lot of times, what I saw in those places when you're really looking at a vision or a mission, clarity is missing.
Yeah.
And clarity does come from purpose. And there has to be that shared purpose. So for leaders, because we do need, I mean, and that's why there is that balance between that love, that passion, like I know we can do this or we can change the world, but you also have to have a process, a system, a way that we're catching those failures because we're gonna fail. Anytime you're gonna do something and something that's gonna be worth doing, you're going to make mistakes. You're
Yeah.
gonna That's not a problem. Look at software. That's how software is. That's how we got technology the way it is. What do they do when they release it? Beta. What is happening in the beta? We want you to break the system, figure every single thing that's wrong. Tell us everything that is wrong because we want to connect. We want to see all the bugs. We want to see any breakdowns. We want to see what are the error messages, not just that, oh, it didn't work. Well, what did the error say? And we see that from technology. So we see that growth, but the same way happens with leadership and with love. And that's where the problem comes in many times. That emotional aspect cannot be separated from the processes and the systems. Not that they need to be apart because they do coexist together in one. You cannot implement processes and systems if you don't have that love, that passion, that hope, that rapport, even to be able to do it, that trust. But you have to build both and not be afraid of the operational system in order to bring your vision, your love to pass. People are going to love you for it. A lot of times I see leaders that are afraid of it because they're like, oh, they see a liking, we want to belong. There might be a feeling
Yeah.
of rejection. Um, Sometimes just don't know. Sometimes you are such an awesome, great, inspiring leader, and everything is awesome, and nobody wants to tell you maybe things are not so awesome. Because otherwise you may be seen like, it's almost like a fake positive, right?
Yeah.
You have a thing like, hey, we really admire you, we really honor you for the leadership that you bring, that we're not bringing these other things that we're seeing, because we also don't want to be perceived that we're not on board. That is going to be key for the leader, and this is where psychological safety is. You can have a low psychological safety organization even when you have a very passionate, loving, caring leader. If you don't have the leadership systems in place in every area where you can get that feedback loop, where you are adding to and where you're making mistakes together and people know when those mistakes are and they see you handle those mistakes.
So Hannah, we often talk on this podcast, either with myself and Lorna or with our guests, around psychological safety, and I am a huge fan of Amy Edmondson's work around this. I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the ways that you advise leaders or that you see leaders most effectively building that psychological safety in their organizations? Because I'm a big believer that it
Yeah.
doesn't just happen by getting the right people around the table. It's done by actioning things. Well, what are things that leaders can do that can successfully build that psychological safety in their organization? We'll be right back to continue this episode. Do the people in your organization function as a group or a team? We used to use these words interchangeably, but discovered there's a significant difference when we operate as a group versus when we operate as a team. So, what's the difference? Access the Are We a Group or a Team activity to engage your staff in understanding if they are functioning as a group or team, part of our Collaborative Leaders Toolkit series. In this workshop guide, you'll clearly define the impact of working as a team and the conditions necessary to establish those effective teams. This workshop guide is yours for only $9, and you'll receive everything you need to lead your staff, including workshop slides, participant handout, step-by-step instructions for leading this activity, as well as suggestions for next steps and possible extension suggestions. Go to bit.ly/J group team to access, or search for it under the resources tab on jigsawlearning.ca to learn more about this valuable resource to reinforce why we need to be working in teams to ensure success for each and every learner. And now back to our conversation.
Sure, absolutely. And for those of you that may not be familiar with psychological safety, I mean, psychological safety really is talking about the how do I feel? What is the overall temperature I have in the room for me to be able to execute and operate in my strength zone, essentially. That's going to take me being able to vocalize, be able to try new things, ask questions, be able to execute, perhaps make mistakes.
And I would even argue admit mistakes. It's not just the making, but being able to say, hey, this didn't go well. And I'm okay saying that because I know that people aren't going to jump down my throat, especially a leader's not going to target me or flail me for that mistake.
That's a good point. I mean, you think about it, it's kind of basis, and we started using that. I mean, like if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the very basic part is safety is a big deal with that. Now, when we're talking about to the pinnacle of it being self-actualization, where you're going into that innovative part, well, we're asking our leaders to come up with solutions. We're asking our leaders to make decisions, to, like, hey, we want you to be the best version of yourself, Lord. That's self-actualization. You can't have that unless you have safety. So you're absolutely right. I can't just put people in a room and expect them to go and you're psychologically safe if there's not also a way. Okay, well, what's the way that we do that? So for that, there's a difference between representation and also integration. I mean, you think about that. Sometimes we think because we have representation from different things and okay, that means everybody gets to be a part of the process. Everybody is able to say what they need to say because we have meetings at 10 a.m. and, if anybody has a question or a suggestion, that's where we do it. It's important. That's good. But the question is, what is the integration? How are those ideas integrated into the actual coming up with a solution? The how is key for the psychological safety. Because you see a lot of times that, okay, yeah, we collect ideas, we collect surveys, we collect all those things. How are we then integrating that knowledge into the solution that we're not going to apply, into the direction we're not going to navigate, into the products we're going to develop, into the hiring that we're going to do, into the services? The integration, being able to vocalize the integration for people to know. And here's the question I would say, how do you know that they know? How do you know that they know their ideas are truly valued, that their ideas are integrated, how decisions are made here? And a lot of times, this is where I see leadership consistently fail, even great organizations where decisions are made. We'll have people around the table, we'll collect their ideas, we'll take this back. Next thing you know, is some decision that was made, and it's just, it goes down the pipeline.
Mm.
And not really understanding, well, because we had that conversation back then, you know, and some people may feel like, well, did we even, how was this addressed? Or this other thing was brought up, you know, how were things? So there, it does take work. Not that you're having to explain yourself for everything. There, people are not going to understand everything. It's not that, but there has to be some clarity in how the decisions, how that feedback is taken, and how it is integrated, because that's going to tell the rest of the leadership line how to make decisions moving forward. The problem comes in when these decisions are made, they're asked to be implemented, and we're not training our people on how to now implement, look through this lens. And that's all part of the psychological safety. Not only do we say what this is a decision we went to, this is where priorities come into place. This is the priorities that where our strategy comes in. Much more, these priorities, how do they align to the mission and the vision?
Mhm.
So when you're talking about psychological safety, there's a constant callback to alignment, because you're going to need your leaders to be making decisions. When you're not there, essentially culture is making the decisions. You're hiring, you're purchasing, your sales, the marketing, all of those things are requiring decisions. And we gotta train the leaders on how to do that.
And I'm hearing, Hannah, the importance of communication through all of this as well, like continually communicating our processes, our, and this is where you're talking about clarity as well. So,
Clarity is a big way. And I'm sorry, with the process and systems, this is where I see also a lot of times a failure, because we may implement a new process, but we're not getting rid of an old process. And sometimes the old process still creeps in because we haven't really trained on the new process. And people need to understand the why, especially people that have been there for a long time. Some industries like education,
yeah.
they're very traditional, where time does matter, like how long you've been there. Military, it matters. So they have some places traditional structures that really even need more um, preparation for implementing the processes and systems.
Absolutely. So I want to go back to this idea of alignment because I find that a misalignment can obviously erode collaboration, but sometimes it's quietly happening before even leaders recognize that it's creeping in. Would you say are some early warning signs that leaders should be definitely paying attention to? Um, and how should they respond when they spot those early signs of misalignment? What would be the early things that I could be looking for as a leader as indicators that the alignment might not be there?
Sure. So I remember I started with like the whole burnout, right? Going on fumes. So that may be the result, the extreme of a consistent misalignment. Something how do I serve leaders? I mean, I serve leaders that don't just want to do the thing, but want to do the right thing and want to do the thing right. So that means that doing the right thing is key in finding alignment. Because a lot of times, like I said, we take on many tasks, responsibilities that are not only not in alignment with who we are, with not even in alignment with the role that we're serving. So one of the early signs is the consistent feel, I'm never going to catch up. Like that consistent part of, not that there's not things about the roles. I mean, as it happens in everything. There's this, I'm a mom of five. There's things I love every day. There's things I really don't love, like laundry and dishes, right? It doesn't mean I hate motherhood. I love my kids. But there's gonna be certain things that are gonna happen that are you were not gonna like. But that is different from the constant drain that is felt, the avoidance, the feeling that you start getting. And we have to talk about that emotional feeling, because that's where it starts, that you as a leader will start feeling that pit in your stomach. Sometimes you see it in early warning signs. If you're physically in a business, sometimes you can see it when people wait until the time that you have to clock in while sitting in the car or before they actually do that. You know, like they're just waiting until the very last time, because they're like, okay, I'm just gonna be there for just the amount of time that I'm being asked to be. You see the in meetings, you may not see the participation, even in virtual meetings, and it is difficult in virtual meetings. You have to figure out what is the rhythm of your organization when it comes to virtual meetings. But in that, even not having the questions, you have the same people ask questions. You have the same people giving the comments. You don't have these overall diversity in as far as the people that are communicating or talking. So those are some early signs. The tiredness, the when you start seeing, if you're an employer, so they catch up, they like in school, right? Absenteeism, being out a lot, being late, not socializing with other people. So those are some early signs to productivity. There has to be a way that you are measuring productivity. And here's where it gets tricky. Again, you're not going to be able to process without the processes and systems. And this is in no way micromanaging at all. But there has to be, again, when you're talking about KPIs, when you're talking about standards, when you're talking about expectations, a consistent mismatch in productivity is going to tell you also the misalignment. Much more, one of the basic things, ask your leaders, ask the people on the team to tell you what the mission or the vision of the company is.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised.
Yeah,
Because,
absolutely.
that's the way decisions are made. If they don't know what the mission and the vision is for the organization, they're not going to be able to do the daily decisions, and that's going to cause misalignment. And you're absolutely right. It's not we're over here. Now we have 20% turnover. It's a little bit at a time. Every time it's a little bit at a time.
Well, and I think this really comes back, Hannah, to that idea of consistently when we're moving forward, as you mentioned before, on an initiative or this meeting, being able to always come back and say, is this in alignment with our priorities, with our mission or vision? Is there connection? And just constantly asking that over and over of ourselves, I think is often a really good indicator of should we be going in this direction, or is this something that's actually meaningful for my time?
So Curtis, that's a key thing because honestly, when you start, how do you see misalignment in the organization? You have to be able to catch it in you first.
Yeah.
You have to be really, this is where the self-aware leader comes in. As a leader, you do have to be very much in tune because you can't expect for your people to be engaged if you yourself are not engaged. You can't
Yeah.
expect people to be motivated and, start every day ready to tackle the day if you're not ready to tackle the day. So again, a leader not only knows the way, but also guides the way and shows the way. So here, key is the leader, your ability to have your cup filled, and you're going to have to give out of the overflow. If you're giving out of your reserves, that's where the burnout starts happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Hannah, I want to dig in a little more to the HEARTnomics core methodology. And I know that you've shared that the collaboration element really comes alive in the reach phase. So, would you be able to explain to us what that reach phase is, what that looks like, and how does it turn collaboration from just good intentions to actual innovation, momentum, and culture change? We'll be right back to continue this episode. It doesn't take long for any teacher to realize that explicit expectations and routines are necessary for a large group of students to engage in meaningful activity, regardless of what they teach. Although we recognize this is true for any classroom, we don't always take the same care to design careful expectations and routines for adults. We establish a time to meet and clarify a purpose, then bring team members together. Since we are all adults, there is no need for rules of engagement, but very quickly we discover, just like in the classroom, dysfunctions within the team will persist, such as coming late, checking phones consistently, working on sending emails throughout the meeting, along with many others. So how do we guard against this happening? The easy answer is we need to co-develop team norms. Download our free Guide for Leaders to Develop, Sustain, and Reinforce Effective Norms for Team Success. This guide provides you with step-by-step instructions on how to develop your team norms. Access the guide at bit.ly/team norms guide. That's bit.ly/team norms guide. Norms provide the essential foundation for our teams to commit to working together, reflecting on what each team member needs to be successful and leading to the articulation of an agreed upon set of guidelines assist us when working effectively as a team. And now back to our conversation.
Absolutely. So the reach phase comes in from my core method for organizations, which is cultivate, optimize, reach, and elevate. So the reach phase is really your feedback loops. When we're talking about an organization, you have both internal customers, right? Your team members, your employees, contractors, people that are actually doing the work, that your immediate person who receives the work. As soon as you're done with that newsletter, who gets it?
Yeah.
That's your customer, right? So the reach phase is having a way to do, first of all, the knowledge internally to know who is my internal customer. And a lot of times I find a lot of the either employees or leaders, they don't really know who all is their true customer. The technology team might be your customer. Their finance team might be your customer. So you got to know who is your customer. So the reach part is having clarity on who are my immediate direct internal customers. And of course, we have the indirect customers, right? The ones that go in pipe the line that I have to go maybe through finance first so then I can get to my contractor. So my contractor relationship also depends on how fast my finance department pays them. So, so you have that, but understanding who my work, how does it work in the pipeline? How is it overall? So it's understanding also in the belonging in the organization. Now, externally, reach is my customers who I'm actually serving. The one that is actually getting the end product. When they get the product, how am I able to see, did it meet specs? Was it to the standards? Are they using it? Is it working for them? What was the overall experience? To be able to have that relationship, that feedback loop, that a lot of times that's put onto the customer service department or to the sales team. But in essence, again, we're talking about what is the impact of every person with my external customer, because again, it's the culture. So reach is the part of where the culture really is speaking for itself, the way that we treat one another internally, the way that we're known by our customers. How do our customers know us? I mean, before you might get something, if you go to a restaurant, you start seeing the interactions between the employees first before they even come and say hello. You see if they're smiling to each other. You see if they're talking to one another. You see the fast-paced restaurants versus the ones that are more calmed down. So you already start getting cues as a customer of where you're at. That's what we're talking about, that reach. The people are looking, especially when we're talking about in the way that business is happening now, and when we're looking at things that do make the difference, the details, the customer service, the experience, the story. We want to know the story behind everything. Well, what's the story behind, the coffee that I'm drinking today? What was it grow? What were the people like, right? So the reach aspect is going to be about that relationship with your customers. Now that builds on the optimization, right? So that's going to is going to challenge me. How am I not only being intentional about the collaboration internally and the collaboration, even when we talk about our customers, I hear a lot of companies, hey, we're your partner in education. We're your partner in finance. How are you doing that?
Yeah.
How partner? Just because they buy? Is that the end of the partnership? Buy our product, we become your partner. It's understanding if if that's your promise being with your mission. The reach aspect is how you're fulfilling that relationship level. You're telling your customer it's about. How do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking about this from a school specific perspective. That's the industry that I'm most tightly connected to. And as a principal in the school, if I were to equate what you're sharing there, that internal customer is my staff team, my teachers that are interacting with students. External are the students. And I always saw myself as a principal saying, yes, I'm here to help ensure that the students have the greatest success, but actually my role is to support the teachers because they're the closest ones to that end goal. So how do I support them in an
Right.
effective way and create feedback loops? If I avoid them to go straight to, as you're saying, my external customer, which is my student,
Right.
I'm going to have disconnects. I'm going to have difficulties.
And they're seeing that, right? Because it's
Yeah.
the bypassing. Then what happens is that disempowerment.
Yeah.
And we see that also this empowerment, although very well meaning, right? Very well, like, hey, that's who our customers are number one. Well, yes, which, who's your customer? You
Yeah.
know, that's honestly, you have to look. I mean, again, I did serve for in the K through 12 for about 18 years as a content developer. So also you have for you a customer as a principal is your superintendent, right? Is a board of education. That's another customer. That customer that may have the teacher does not have their immediate customer. I mean, you're their customer. As a principal for a teacher, you're their customer, because they serve you as a principal and they serve the students. So
Yeah.
it's understanding that. Principals, again, you're serving the superintendent, you're serving the strategic plan. So it's not just the vision and the mission of the school, but it's also the alignment of the strategic plan for the county, the strategic plan for the state. And then there has to be alignment with the strategic planning internally for the school.
Yeah.
And also, don't forget the other groups that may come along with the school, right? Like your PTAs, like your foundations, that the other organizations, maybe like the student athlete groups that
Yeah.
come along.
Community organizations.
Absolutely. And they become, in essence, they start supporting that mission and also customers. Because in a sense, you have to see that you become the customer, but also they become customers in leadership because they have to have a reason for why do we want this school in particular or the system in particular to excel. So that's where you start the stakeholders.
Yeah.
So we look at both customers and we look at the stakeholders, the ones that are invested, although they may not be buying our stuff, they still have a stake in the success and the impact of what we're doing. And for that is also reach, is being
Yeah.
able to activate the stakeholders in our ecosystem.
So, Hannah, I know that leaders can often get overwhelmed with that ecosystem and the
Yeah.
complexity that comes with all of those relationships and see the collaboration between those groups being more aspirational than actual.
Mm.
What would you say would be small but powerful shifts that you would suggest for leaders to immediately make in order to improve the collaboration and connection with, as you've described, with the various customers that we're in relationship with?
Okay, so this is like $1 million question, so I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
charge this one. No.
Yeah.
Um, One is I would say for my leaders, seek to connect, not to impress.
Yeah.
A lot of times I find the leaders, where does it come in this exhausting thing? Because they're trying to impress people instead of impressing upon people the
Yeah.
need of the mission and the vision. And for that, I would say a shift. One of my favorite shifts that actually comes from the leader shift in Maxwell's book is going from soloist to conductor.
Yeah.
As a soloist, what was the difference between a soloist, right? I mean, the spotlight's on them. And they're amazing. I mean, amazing if they're a violinist, if they're a piano player, they probably got that solo because they're so good at what they do that we want to hear that. But if you think about the conductor, they're also really, really good. But what did they have to do? They had to put their instrument down so that they can bring in a better move, a harmony out of many instruments together. So that is a shift. That is a conscientious, that is an intentional shift. You don't just become a conductor because you were a soloist, just like you don't become the soloist because you're the conductor. You just don't. So it is a matter of putting it down because you are more interested not in the being the solo, the one that brings the main melody of the harmony, but because you do see and you're totally understand how beautiful the orchestra and the symphony comes together to where you're able to then shine the spotlight on all the other ones. And that is a shift that needs to happen
Yeah.
for leaders. That is a shift that will change and revolutionize the way that your organization leads. When you put down your expertise, you still use them, but they're not bring attention to them, and be able to really bring to that collaboration the subject matter experts and shine a light upon them.
Hmm. Well, and I think this goes back to that old adage of the room is always smarter than any one person in it. And I mean,
Yes.
leaders arrive at the positions they're in because they're strong in the work that they do. But what you're saying is when we are in that leadership role, we kind of have to not be the strongest person or the smartest person or the one that we're drawing all the attention to, but rather how do we encapsulate the room, all the others that we're supporting. And I love
Yeah,
that idea of connecting.
yeah, if you think about it, I mean, that was a shift that happened in education, right? I mean, when you looked at the school, where the school was the place where you went to get knowledge, right? And now knowledge is at the palm of the hands. Like, you really think about the role of school, where the leader in the front, the teacher was the lecturer, really the role, and there was a big shift. They had to go from lecturer to facilitator.
Yeah.
Instead of me giving you down information dump, I'm actually facilitating and bringing the information that you're exposed to and seeing how we can apply it and facilitating learning. And that's where the ability, and it is a skill. It is a skill that leaders have to develop is that facilitation skill
Yeah.
and be able to leverage the knowledge. Again, it's not the conductor is not probably not the best in every instrument. They're probably not the subject matters in everything, even maybe even one, but yet they can bring the best out of everything, right? Yet they're able to leverage everybody's skill. So you have this amazing, heart-wrenching symphonies that are able to transcend some of them time, transcend the place where you're at, open up your mind. And the same thing with leaders is understanding that skill of facilitation, where you're not having to be the lecturer, the one the most knowledgeable in the room, but you do have to be the one who's able to leverage the knowledge in the room.
I love that, Hannah. So, as we bring this conversation to a close, and I've loved, just been sitting here smiling and nodding, how would our listeners or viewers get a hold of you, get in touch with you if wanting to engage further?
Oh, well, I would love to connect with you all, or like we say here, y'all. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn under Hanna Bauer. Also, you can find me under HEARTnomics, HEARTnomics.com. That's my website. And I do have a neat little free complimentary assessment for you for alignment. So for those of you that are looking for that internal alignment for individual growth, or also alignment for your organization, I have a treat there for you for anyone who's listening there that wants to take that assessment. We'd love to do this with you.
Awesome. I will be in contact, Hannah, and we'll make sure that that gets into the show notes when this episode gets released as well. This has been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for joining me for this important conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Curtis.
Thank you. I always love this part of our episodes when have the chance to just consolidate some of the key learnings that came out. And Hannah, wow, the passion and the enthusiasm that she brings to this work is evident. I loved kind of almost the bookends where she started off with that idea of how important it is to fail to learn. And I think that's critical in our organizations. I, we hear of organizations talking about communicating their favorite failures or that we're going to aspire to fail. Um, and by this, I don't want to misinterpret that we should be looking to not do things well. Of course not. But understanding that we are going to learn through that process. And I think as leaders, for us to be clear in our communication that, yeah, we're going to make mistakes and that's okay. We're going to learn from them and just continually communicating that out for our organization. And then I also loved how she communicated that idea that when we move into leading teams, we move from a soloist to a conductor. And that idea that leaders, you're in your roles because you were exceptional at some part or portion of the work that you're now leading. Obviously, in order to get to that spot, but now in that leadership role, as Hannah said, you're now there to facilitate others and I loved what she talked about to leverage the skill of the others that you have on your team. And I think that's just a critical reminder for us to think about not needing all the answers, but being able to facilitate and leverage the skill to ascertain the answers and to really gain the or access the knowledge that exists within any team. So with that, would love to thank Hannah. Please make sure that you check out the episode notes to be able to connect to our website. We'll also put on that free assessment that she talked about as well. And as always, love to put out these two requests. First, if you're listening or viewing, please join or share our mailing list at jlinsiders.com. And there you'll receive free weekly content and resources that can help you in supporting your teams. Secondly, please like, share, review, or subscribe for this podcast to really help ensure someone else can be able to find it and find these conversations like the one we've just had with Hannah. And then finally, don't hesitate to reach out to questions@jigsawlearning.ca if you have a future topic, a guest, or if you'd just like to connect. We'd love to hear from you. So as always, we'll end off with wishing you the best as you endeavor to build a culture of collaboration in your organization. Take care.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.